Hi, and welcome to Getting Biblical, the show where I drink too much and talk about my favorite Bible stories. I am Matt Smith, your host, and thank you for joining us today. So, for today's episode, we are diving into the story of Esther. Not Easter, that's coming up later, that's a month away or so, but the story of Esther. Now, if you don't know about Esther, she is amazing. She's one of only two females who have books of the Bible named after them. Ruth is, of course, the other one. There's a possible third one if you want to talk about the Apocrypha, which is not canon. It's a whole other can of worms to talk about that. So we're not gonna open that right now. But we'll sum it up. Esther is one of two. She represents 50% of the females that got a book of the Bible named after them, right? So she's a huge deal, big deal. And actually, the reason I'm bringing her up right now and the reason that we're talking about her this week is in Judaism, there's actually a whole holiday surrounding Esther. It's one of the most fun, one of the nicest, most kind of chill of all the Jewish holidays. It's called Purim, or Purim, and it's a lesser holiday, meaning it's not quite as huge of a deal as, say, Passover or Yom Kippur. Kind of like if you think of Christmas and Thanksgiving as major holidays here in the U.S., then we've got like Labor Day kind of on the back end. Like you take the day off, you do some stuff, maybe you have some fun, but Walmart doesn't close, right? It doesn't stack up high enough for that to happen. So maybe that's not a super accurate analogy there, but just kind of giving you a little bit of a frame of reference. But it's a fun holiday nonetheless. It's super cool, and it's an amazing story. It's so fun. The holiday itself focuses on pretty much the reading of the story of Esther. They add some extra stuff, some other fun elements to it. So as you're reading it in your group or your congregation or whoever, as you're going through it, and not to get into any spoilers just yet, but the story of Esther has the bad guy, Haman, right? And the good guy, Mordecai. And, of course, the heroine of the story who stopped genocide from happening, literally, Esther herself, right? And it's so cool. But traditionally speaking, when the story is read, usually children in the audience will, when they hear, they listen intently. And when they hear the name of the villain, Haman, read aloud in the story, it's customary to either stomp your feet or to use a noisemaker, a grogger or something like that, to kind of boo the bad guy. And I don't know how this is going to come out on the microphone. I did borrow a couple groggers, and I'm not going to do it for every time his name comes up in the story. That would get kind of ridiculous. But just so that we're all on the same page, this is the noise that you would be hearing when the villain's name is said, right? So you'd be reading through, and Haman. And I'm sure that was horrible, and I might have to go change the pitch of that later. We'll see. In post edit, I don't know. I've never recorded the sound of a grogger on this microphone. So, yeah, or any microphone for that matter. Anyway, so generally you would make these noises and like boo and like right for the bad guy, and then in some traditions they cheer for when Mordecai is named or when Esther's name is said, depending on how you grew up or whatever. And it's super fun, super cool, especially for the kids to just get involved in everything. It also, I think, from what I've heard, from what I understand, in Israel itself and a couple other places, it has become tradition for some to drink heavily on Purim. It is supposed to be a celebration and a joyful time, and booze is a very good way to do that, as we all know. There's some of the tradition stems from a 4th century rabbi that recommends to drink on Purim until you cannot even distinguish between cursing Haman or blessing Mordecai. So when you're trying to listen and you're trying to do your groggers, or you're trying to cheer for the hero or cheer for Esther, whatever, there's one rabbi's notes in the Talmud that says that you should drink until you can't even tell the difference, which I'm sure has a deeper meaning than just getting loaded, just an excuse or permission to get loaded. But that's kind of where the drinking comes from. So if there was ever a holiday that matches up with this show, Getting Biblical, it would be this holiday. It would be Purim, the holiday where you drink too much and talk about your favorite Bible story. It's a pretty perfect match. So, and of course, the holiday revolves around food, right? Which is amazing. Often potato-related dishes and desserts, and also this cool thing: children and sometimes adults, if they wish, but mostly children, are encouraged to dress up as their favorite character from the story. So it's not quite Jewish Halloween, but it's as close as we're going to get, right? There is no Jewish Halloween. We don't have a 1-to-1 ratio of actually scary zombies or ghosts or whatever type thing. But this is the one holiday where it's encouraged for them to dress up. And it's fun and it's neat. And you can always keep your eye on whatever little kid decides at 5 years old that he wants to dress up as Haman. That's almost like a dark omen or something, or dark foreshadowing of how that kid's gonna live his life, possibly, if he's wanting to dress up like the bad guy. But anyway, it's a fun time. It's a fun holiday. I don't have children. I don't think that I ever will. But if I do, I can't wait to celebrate this with them and get out the groggers and do all that fun stuff. So it's a great story. Can't wait to talk about it. But first, of course, in the spirit of the holiday, let's talk about what I'm drinking. So originally, I had planned to try and get a dessert wine or something. There's a lot of sometimes sweets that are eaten for Purim. That type of thing, and I was going to try to do that. It was, I had some ideas in mind, and I ended up having kind of a crazy day at work. Didn't go as I had planned. We got much busier than I thought. Some unexpected stuff. Doesn't matter. You don't care. I get it. So I didn't stop by the store. I came straight home, and I had this bottle of wine sitting around for a while. That I had about 6 months, I think, 4 or 5 months, 6 months, which isn't a long time, I know, but it sat untouched, and decided to go ahead and bust it out. It was the closest thing I had to something that I felt like drinking, and it is a Bordeaux. So a Bordeaux is wine can be confusing if you don't know about it. So there are, let's say, 9 or so different types of wine. Merlot, right? The Cabs. You've got the Pinot Noirs. You've et cetera, whatever. Not going to go through the whole list today. But then you've got the other things, other mentions, other words that sound like they are wines, like this, like a Bordeaux, which sounds like another type of wine, but it actually isn't. It kind of is, but it's not in the bigger classifications of what wines are or types of wines. Bordeaux just means that it comes from that area of France. It's actually more like a legal term, kind of like when you say it's Kentucky whiskey, it has to come from Kentucky, right? You can't sell it out of Portland or whatever and call it Kentucky whiskey. It has to be made in that state. So it's that kind of a legal clarification, if you will. So a Bordeaux is from Bordeaux, France, and the wine from that region. There's this whole thing. It's really interesting where there's like a river or whatever that comes through it, and on the one side of the river they make it one way, on the other side of the river they make it another way, and but ultimately most of them, there's some flexibility, but most of them are all a blend of Merlot and Cab, right? I love Merlot. Merlot is my favorite type of wine out there. Cab is in the top 3. So a Bordeaux should match my specifications pretty well. And I found this one. This was at just my local grocery store. They had a buy one, get one free offer. Still not as cheap as the Aldi's wine per bottle, but I figured I'd give it a shot. And I'm going to be honest, I don't love it. I kind of like the label, honestly. It's got a cow, but it's got it all portioned out, and then it has a grid on the bottom of letting you know what the different cuts of meat are. Number 6 on this map of a cow's body is a fillet, but there's the 33 different cuts of a cow and the different parts of the animal. And this wine is supposedly is marketed as supposed to be paired with barbecuing, and it's actually I kind of respect it, but I'll tell you why I don't in a second. The name of the bottle is just Best Bordeaux Quality. I like it because on the label they have bolded out in red font, whatever, the B from the word best, the B from the word Bordeaux, and the Q from quality. So it's, Best Bordeaux Quality, also BBQ, barbecue. And that's cute, right? That's kind of nice. What's not cute, what's not nice, is when you try to Google them as a company or like a wine brand and try to look up information on them. You try to Google Best Bordeaux Quality wine or whatever, all you get are top 10 lists on BuzzFeed and bullshit, like just talking about different brands, and it's very hard to find information on this one in particular. But it doesn't matter. It was, I don't know, at the grocery store. I'm not looking to get sponsored by them or anything, to be quite honest. I'm gonna go back to my Aldi's Merlot very shortly. I think it's not for me personally, but it's fine. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm drinking tonight. That's what we're doing, drinking wine, and we're talking about Esther. So all that to say, let's talk more about her. So the story of Esther. Let me go ahead and lay out the groundwork and the characters for you. So if you've been keeping up with the show and where we're at with Moses and everything, this story is quite a bit in the future. It's after the temple in Jerusalem has been built and then destroyed again, and now the whole territory has fallen under Persian rule, right? The Persians are in charge of the area. And the king of Persia, and I'm only going to try to say his name once. I'm not even good at this. King... I feel like, I don't know, as you've been listening to the show, maybe you've been like laughing at me behind my back about how I pronounce names, but I think for the most part I do a pretty good job for most of them. I think I nail it often, right? For these old names that we actually maybe may or may not know how to actually pronounce. But so his name, and is very long to spell, and I'm not going to waste the airtime to do it, but the way that it looks like it should be pronounced, King Ahasuerus. It's AH and then like a dinosaur, right? It's like a comedian dinosaur, like Ahasuerus, like that's horrible. But a lot of texts refer to him as King Xerxes, right? The Xerxes, right? So and that's a name we've heard before, right? Xerxes. So take your pick, I guess, whatever. But I'm just gonna say the king. The king of Persia took over everything from India to Ethiopia, like 127 provinces, as the story goes. A massive kingdom. And after he'd taken over the whole area and what felt accomplished and everything, he decided to have a big party to celebrate. And when I say a big party, like I have big parties. Like we do it for Halloween, we do it for my birthday, we do it for other times. We have big parties. We do it up. I can't even compare to this guy. His big party lasted 180 days. Half a year long of this party. Like, can you imagine? Like, I have friends that have trouble hanging out past 9 p.m. Like, they try to, like, hide in a corner and fall asleep on a couch somewhere after 9 p.m. Can you imagine a 180-day rager? It sounds amazing. If only I had a time machine. Anyway, and then after the 180-day period, he decided that he wasn't done yet and had another 7-day-long feast, which I guess is a clear distinction in the Bible between a party and a feast. They seem like they're kind of interchangeable terms, but it didn't say he had a 187-long-day party. No, he had a 180-day party and then a 7-day-long feast. So he has this 7-day-long feast after the party with his dude bros, but his wife wasn't really there. Queen Vashti, she had another big feast for her ladies. So they were separate but equal parties. They were two different parties in two different halls or whatever, and they didn't, all the dudes were in one, all the women were in the other one. So on the 7th day of the feast, when the king was absolutely drunk, right, the most drunk. He'd been partying for 180 days and then another 7 days on top of it, right? So he was at peak hungover / drunkenness, whatever, like riding the high. On the 7th day, he told his servants or whatever to go fetch his Queen Vashti, and tell her to wear her crown and come show everyone at the men's only feast how beautiful she was. when you say the words just like that, it sounds innocent and fine. And Queen Vashti, upon hearing the request, promptly said, "No fucking way. I'm not doing that." And it's not clear why exactly she refused this request. The simplest idea is that she knew it was a room full of drunk dudes, and being summoned just to come walk around and be pretty was demeaning. And I get it, honey. Like, okay. There's also, though, an idea, because of the way that the verse is worded, that when the king summons her to, quote-unquote, wear your crown and come show your beauty, there's an idea that he wanted her to only wear her crown, if you get my drift, which is a pretty easy drift to get. And if that's the reason, then even more power to you for standing up for, basic human decency and not doing that. So whatever her reason, and you kind of can't blame her either way, but whatever her reasons, she refused. And the king was mad. He talks to all of his royal team of lawyers and everything about it after the fact, and he's like, how dare she tell me no? Like who does she think she is? I'm the king, she's my queen, she should do what I say, clothes optional, whatever. What should we do about this? And then one of his head lawyers, like the hand of the king, basically, in the biggest display of patriarchal, like, little dick energy I've ever seen, is he goes like king, she didn't just wrong you personally, but she set a precedent. Word will spread across the kingdom. Women everywhere will hear of what she did and be inspired to rebel against their husbands. Like, oh, this will cause anarchy in your whole kingdom. We can't let this go. My recommendation as counsel, as hand to the king, is to banish her from the kingdom. This will send a message to everyone in the kingdom that women better listen to their husbands and not talk back. Basically is what he said. And the king's like, yep, you are absolutely right. You're 1,000% right. Let's do that. So he not only banished Queen Vashti from the kingdom, which, as I just read before, was over a lot of stuff, right? 127 provinces. He banishes her from the kingdom, whatever, but also sent out a news report and declarations about the banishment, letting everyone know what had happened. Like, he didn't do it quietly. He announced it on prime time, whatever, network television, and then also made declarations that all women should serve their husbands, and just set women's suffrage back a shit ton with this whole act, right? So not cool. I stand with Queen Vashti. Like, she didn't do anything wrong, I don't think. Anyway, so that happened. So fast forward a little ways, and she's banished. We never hear from her again, by the way. Like, spoiler alert, but she's gone. She gets banished. She never comes back. There's no happy ending for Vashti, unfortunately. All this happens, and in the future, little ways down the road, the king starts to get a little lonely. And his best friends, the hand of the king, saw that there needed to be a new queen. So he tells the king, hey, I have an idea. How about we round up all the most beautiful women in all the kingdom to come appear before the king, and whoever pleases you the most will become your new queen. It's literally the first ever the Old Testament edition version of The Bachelor, right? It's that show. It's the whole thing. And of course the king was thrilled by it, right? Of course he's into it. So that's what they're doing. They're doing open casting calls and auditions or whatever, I guess, for all the fair maidens to be on King Xerxes, like, The Bachelor. And as the news went out, there was a guy named Mordecai, right? A Jew in the land, who was raising his young cousin, who she was an orphan. We don't know how or why, but she was an orphan, and her name was, of course, Esther. Now, Esther was gorgeous and was, of course, scooped up to be a contestant for the king. But before she left to go be on the show, Mordecai had instructed Esther not to tell anyone about her heritage. Not quite sure why. I can't remember if there's a reason or not listed in the passage, but he's like, hey, we should keep it. We should lay low with the Jew stuff. Just smile a lot and be fine. She keep it on the down low, and she did. And in preparation for the pilot episode of the King's, Bachelor show, there was a eunuch who was in charge of the women contestants named Haggai or Haggai. I think it's Haggai. And for whatever reason, this eunuch Haggai loved Esther. Like she was just his favorite. And like not romantically, but like just favored her, just like whatever. Haggai gave Esther like all this stuff, all this insider info, and trained her up real well. Like have you seen the episode of Seinfeld where Jerry starts dating, what was it, like a Miss America contestant, and then Kramer takes over as her tutor and like shows her how to do it and everything, and kind of bombs their relationship together. It's like that. It's Kramer is the eunuch in this story, and then Esther is the girl. So after all this, they do the show, they do the pilot episode, whatever. They have all the girls come out and do everything, and the king falls in love with Esther. Like, he's totally in. Of all the women, all the contestants, she is his favorite. And she gets the rose or whatever they do on that show, and then he marries her, and he makes her his new queen to replace Vashti, right? So far, so good. So then shortly after she's made queen, right, in another story arc, her uncle Mordecai discovers a plot by two of the king's advisors who wanted to kill the king. And then when Mordecai heard about it, he let Esther know. He got a message to her and said, hey, the king's life is in danger. These two guys are trying to assassinate him. And then Esther took it to the king, who looked into it, and they got their best detectives on it and whatever, and they found out that it was an open and shut case, and they absolutely were going to assassinate the king. And their plot was foiled, and they were hung, right? They were killed for high treason or whatever against the king. And Esther gave her uncle Mordecai all the credit, and it was like written in their logbooks, and it was noted, and like it was a news report and everything. This is all big deal, right? But she didn't still tell that it was like Mordecai was her uncle. She just said, hey, this dude Mordecai told me about this story, and that's how it got passed along, right? She's still keeping her Judaism like on the down low. But anyway, so then the king, I guess, needed a new hand of the king, a new second in command or whatever, and a new best friend. And he promotes this guy, Haman, to this position, and Haman gets paraded around, and everyone in the kingdom bows down to Haman because he's in this new powerful position, right? The new hand of the king. And everyone except Mordecai. Mordecai doesn't bow. So Haman starts asking around, like, hey, did you see that one douche during my parade who didn't bow down to me? What's the deal with that guy? And he keeps asking around, and every day goes by, and when he enters the room or whatever, everyone bows down except Mordecai. So he just gets madder and madder, whatever, and finally he finds out the reason. And I don't know, I can't remember if he like asks Mordecai himself or someone else does or whatever, but Mordecai's like, oh, it's not like personal, bro. Like, I'm Jewish, and we don't bow down to anyone except our God, right? Nothing personal. Don't take offense. Just kind of it's my part of my religion. It's part of my thing. But Haman does not like that answer. He is not okay with it. He's like, how dare he? How dare he? I did not come here to be personally attacked. And Haman decides that if the reason that Mordecai won't bow down to him because that he's Jewish, if that's the reason, then like this escalates so quickly. Haman doesn't even try to like get Mordecai himself killed, right, on the sly, right? Like, didn't just try to like push him out a window sometime or whatever. Like, no, this escalates so quickly. Haman decides the best course of action, right, because he's so butthurt about Mordecai not bowing down to him. His best course of action is full-on genocide. He wants to kill all the Jews. Like he puts in a plan into motion to kill all the Jews in the whole area, everywhere, in the whole 127 provinces or whatever that King Xerxes is now in charge of. Yeah, it's just like, come on, man. Like that is the epitome of like petty and whatever. So Haman goes to the king. He's like, so king, I've been doing some research, and did you know that there's a group of people in your kingdom that they're not like everyone else? This group of people, they have their own rules, and they kind of don't give a crap about your laws or what you think. Me personally, just an idea. I think this could be really bad for the kingdom. I think maybe, possibly, we should just get rid of all these people. I just want you to be successful, king. I want you to be the greatest king ever. I definitely don't have any ulterior petty motives or am butthurt over one guy at all. They don't even think about that. I just want what's best for your kingdom. And he's like, and then he goes on. He goes, in fact, king, I believe in it so much, I will donate 10,000 talents of silver to the king's treasury just to help with the genocide, just to help with the killing of these people. Now, 10,000 talents of silver, you might be asking, how much is that? So, here's the math. A talent is worth 3,000 shekels. A shekel is 15.35 grams. So 10,000 talents equals 30 million shekels, which equals 460 million grams. He's like, great, Matt, that doesn't tell me much of anything. Converted to pounds, that's like 921,000 pounds. It's equal to about 460 tons of silver. So currently, a ton of silver is equal to about $1 million. So 460 tons, rough math, would be equal to $460 million in today's money. That's how much Haman wanted to kill all the Jews. $500 million of his own money to help pay for the genocide, the wiping out of these people, because Mordecai wouldn't bow down. It's a lot. That's a lot. And the king is like, that sounds like a great idea. I can see you're really committed. That's a lot of money. We can't have these non-conformists in the kingdom at all, right? He's like, you know what? In fact, you've inspired me so much. Don't even worry about paying me that $500 million. I got you, dog. Let's just do the genocide thing. And so a decree goes out in all the land on the 13th day of the 12th month that there would be a 24-hour-long day where everyone was encouraged to murder any Jews they wanted and that they could take their stuff. And if you're catching what I'm putting down, you are thinking correctly. This is, in fact, the first ever recorded biblical example of the purge. Right? It's a very specific purge. It's a focused purge against one group of people, which is horrible, even as far as purges go. But at least in the Purge movies, they have the decency to open up the purge to everyone, everywhere, and everyone can kill anyone that they want. This was specifically just a purge day against the Jews, which is super fucked up. But that was what it was. So we got this purge day going on. So, of course, Mordecai hears about the upcoming purge day or whatever, as does every other Israelite in the area, and there's great mourning and sadness, and obviously, like what were those old Bugs Bunny cartoons? Not to make light of all this, but where they were like, oh, it's rabbit season, it's duck season, it's rabbit season, it's duck season. Like when you just find out it's open season on against your ethnicity, right? Like posters are going up on trees like it's Jew season. Like, that's troubling, right? That's not okay, man. So Esther catches wind about it, of course, right, at the upcoming purge day, and Mordecai sends Esther a message and tells her, you're the queen, please talk to the king and have him reverse this. And Esther sends back a message, and she's like, you know the rules. No one, not even I, the queen, can just drop in on the king without being summoned. Dropping in unannounced is called a pop-in, and the king hates the pop-in. And the general rule is that if you pop in on the king without him summoning you, then you automatically get put to death. Right? He hates the pop-in. Unless he holds out his golden scepter to you, which spares you from dying. So it's very high risk, right? Like he's got to be in a good mood and not want you to be dead right there. So you are guilty and then sentenced to death unless he pardons you. And it's been like 30 days at this point since the king had summoned Esther. So she's very scared of the pop-in. But Mordecai's but how do you not know that you were placed there by God to be queen just for this moment, right? Like maybe this is what it was all leading to. And Esther's like, you're right. And she says, listen, have all the Jewish people pray and fast for me for the next 3 days. And at the end of 3 days, I'll do the pop-in on the king, and I hope that he spares me. If I die, I die. That's basically what she says. I think her words officially, like the King James version, are like, "If I perish, I perish," or something like that, which might be my next tattoo. I'm not sure. Like quotes the Esther. 3 days later, she gets on her royal clothes and she looks all nice or whatever, and she does this pop in on the king, and she's super worried. And maybe he's having a bad day, maybe he's just not into it, whatever. Maybe he's want to take out his frustrations. He did banish Vashti, at his last party, when he was having a good time. Maybe he's having a bad day and he just lets her die for doing the pop in. We don't know. She doesn't know. She's like, does this dress make me look fat? Like, she's got all this anxiety, so much anxiety. So there she is. She walks in. She's standing in his inner circle, inner court, whatever. She doesn't belong. She wasn't invited. She wasn't summoned. Takes a deep breath, and he sees her there. He sees her there, unannounced, unsummoned, unwhatever. There she is. And then of course, he extends his scepter to her. Like, he hadn't seen her in 30 days. She's gorgeous. Like, I'm not trying to, lessen the whole thing, but, what was she even worried about? Like, he's not mad at all. I don't know what she was worried about. Like, he goes, he's delighted, actually. He's like, my queen! Like, what a great pop-in! He's like, what do you need? What do you request of me? I will grant you anything up to half of the kingdom. And which I think we talked about before in the show is a popular expression that everyone loves to offer. Like, I'll give you anything up to half the kingdom. Like, I'm just waiting for one day to yep, that's what I came here for. I would really like half of your kingdom. Because everyone keeps offering it. Maybe not be so flippant with that. But anyway, but he was excited to see her, so everything was fine. So she's there, and he just asked her, what are you asking me? What do you want? Why are you here? What can I do for you? Right? And she says, what do you think she says? What do you think? Do you think she fires from the hip about the upcoming Purge Day on the Jews? No. She's smart. She says, if it pleases the king, I request that you and Haman, join me for a happy hour that I have prepared. Cocktail hour, whatever you want to call it. And the king says, shit, yeah, babe. Servants, go get Haman right this second. Tell him we're having drinks. It's happy hour. So the king and Haman and Esther all get together, and they have a little cocktail party that she put together. And the king is a couple in or whatever. He's like, okay, Esther, now for reals. This was super nice. This was super cool. But tell me what you really want. Again, up to half the kingdom, I'll give it to you. Do you think she brings up the purge this time? No. She still, again, she says, oh, well, if it pleases the king, I would really, really like it. I really, really want for tomorrow for you and Haman to join me again for another round of drinks. And the king's like, okay, all right, Haman, clear your schedule. We're having drinks again tomorrow with Esther. And so then Haman left that day. He left cocktail hour overjoyed. He's like, the queen must really like me. She keeps inviting me out for cocktails. I'm getting in real good with the king and his wife. If the boss's wife likes you, then you know it's a good sign, right? You know you're in a good spot. And he's super happy about it. And he's walking through the courtyard or whatever, walking away from the drinks with the king and queen. He's walking with a swagger. He's got this shit-eating grin on his face and everything. He's on cloud 9. And then he looks over, and he just happens to glance and see Mordecai. And in a blink of an eye, all of his happiness and joy and everything just evaporates from his body, just leaves every cell that he has, and he instantly gets enraged. And he's like, this motherfucker, how dare he not bow to me? Doesn't even know I just had like drinks with the king and queen. Like, I'm amazing. Why won't this douchebag bow down to me? So Haman goes home and he talks with his wife, Zeresh or whatever, and tells her all this good news about the cocktail hour and all that. But then he also talks and complains about Mordecai and how much he hates him. And his wife, like, I guess they make a good couple, right? Because his wife, Zeresh, was like, here's what you should do, babe, honey. Why don't you build some gallows? Like, where you hang people on. Like real tall ones, like the biggest ones we've ever seen. And ask the king if he would mind, if you could just hang Mordecai on them. Whatever. Like, let's have a good old-fashioned hanging. Let's make the gallows 75 feet tall. Would that make you happy? Like, just like the biggest gallows you ever seen, and we'll hang that guy. And Haman was like, yeah, babe, that would make me happy. A 75-foot tall hanging, like gallows. Great idea, babe. That's why I married you. What would I do without you, you little psychopath, you? Like, I don't know. And then he immediately pays some guys to go build the gallows for hanging. That's that same very day. Like, he got contractors on it, immediately put people to work doing it. So there that night, that very same night, the king couldn't sleep. He tossed and he turned and whatever, but the king couldn't sleep at all. So I don't know about you, but I have trouble sleeping without the TV on. Parks and Recreation or Community or whatever, all these, Office or something. It has to be a show. I can't watch a new show that I haven't seen before because it piques my interest, and then I stay up interested in the show. But if it's a show that I've seen a bunch of times over again, then I can go to sleep because my brain's like, oh, we know what happens in this episode. We're good, and I can check out. But if I don't have the TV on, then my brain just constantly thinks all night for hours and hours. So I need like a slight distraction that's not too interesting. I'm super weird, I know. But so that's what I do to try to get to sleep. And the Old Testament version of that, I guess, is that the king, when he couldn't sleep, had servants of his read out, because they didn't have Netflix or whatever, Hulu. He had his servants read out like ledgers and the logbooks of past events that happened under his rule. Like, so tell me some good stories about myself is basically what's happening. So this one night, they're reading through everything that happened in the past few years or whatever, and they happen to stumble upon and go over the story of where Mordecai, through Esther, saved the king's life from assassination. And the king says to his servants, hey, what rewards did we give Mordecai for saving my life? And the servants are like, oh, let me check. Flip pages, whatever. They're like, Your Majesty, there's no record of him getting any kind of reward at all. And the king's like, what? How can that be? Or whatever. And then instantly, before he could finish that sentence, there was a knock on his door, and it was Haman. Boo. Haman had arrived literally in that moment, talk about bad timing, to ask for permission to hang Mordecai. So there's a knock on the door, right? And then and the king's like, who is it? Like, oh, it's Haman. Like, great, Haman, come on in. And he's like, I don't know why you're here in the middle of the night, but whatever. He's like, Haman, perfect timing. I'm glad you're here. And Haman says, My Majesty, I have come with a request, ... And the king's like, yeah. We'll talk about that later. But first, I need to ask you something. So Haman's like, okay, shoot, what you need? He says, what would you recommend, right? I'm looking for your input. Let's say that somebody, just a guy I know, let's say I, the king, wanted to honor this man. Like, I think this guy is really great, right? I want to reward him for being great. Just like, he's the best. What do you think I should do for this guy? And Haman, of course, egotistical Haman, thinks, he's like, this is it. The queen likes me now, and now the king wants to honor me, right? I've made it. Like, this is the highest Like, I can be in the whole kingdom. Like, I'm so great. This is amazing. And Haman goes full on diva mode. And he goes, here's what I recommend, my king. For the man that you want to honor, you should give him some of your very own clothes, the king's clothes, and let him ride on the king's own personal horse, and then put a crown on that man's head, and choose one of your highest ranking officials to walk the honoree on the horse through the town wearing your clothes and wearing that crown, shouting out that this is how the king honors a man. Like, this is what I recommend that you should do. And the king is like, Haman, that's brilliant, that's perfect. Here, take my clothes, take my horse, go do everything you just said. And Haman starts off like, well, why thank you, king. I'm so, basically going to like say, like, thank you for thinking of me, whatever. But the king keeps talking. The king isn't listening to Haman or whatever. The king just keeps talking. He's like, go do everything that you just said for that guy Mordecai, the Jew. And Haman's like, what? like record scratch, like what? And he's like, yeah, everything you just said. Here's my clothes. Here's my horse. Here's a crown. Go walk him through, and I want you to be the high-ranking official that you mentioned. I want you to escort him through the town and shout out and tell everybody everywhere that Mordecai is honored and that the king really likes him, right? Like, he's one of the king's favorite people. So Haman's like, you gotta be fucking kidding me right now. Like, for reals? But he doesn't have a choice. He does it. He does the whole thing. Mordecai gets put on this horse and gets paraded around the city, and Haman has to yell out how great he is and everything. And Haman is mortified. He hates every breathing second of this. They finish the parade or whatever, and then he wraps it up. He changes clothes because, I don't know, whatever. He's sweaty from walking around the horse all day with Mordecai on it. And he wraps it up, and at least, though, he has this to look forward to. He can go have cocktail hour with the king and queen. So again, the king, now they're at a cocktail hour, and the king tells Esther, he's like, okay, this is day 2. Now tell me, what do you really want? Like, tell me what you want. Ask for anything up to half of the kingdom, and I'll give it to you. And she says, please, if it pleases the king, please, all I wish is for my life to be spared. And of course the king's like, the fuck? Like, what? Like, what? What are you talking about? And she continues. She says, someone wishes to do me harm, me and my people. If we had merely been just sold into slavery but not killed, I wouldn't even be bothering you, the king, with it. But if this plan goes through the way it is now, we shall perish. And the king is like, what are you talking about? What kind of stupid idiot would try and kill you, my beautiful queen? What are you on about right now? What are you talking about? But she stands up and she points and she says, the wicked man that means to do me harm is none other than Haman. And she points at Haman and throws him right under the bus, right? And the king is livid. He's so pissed. And he's like, I literally can't even process this right now. I don't even know what's happening. I can't even. He says, I need some air. So he goes out into his garden. Like, he leaves them alone for a second. Like, he has to go, collect his thoughts and try and wrap his head around what was just told to him. And so then Esther is there with Haman, and Haman is scared as shit. So he already had a bad day with the whole Mordecai horse thing, but now he knows the king is mad at him, so he starts groveling to Esther. He's like, please save me, please convince the king not to kill me. And she's like, nope, get away from me, but he's kind of clawing, groveling, no, please. And as he's groveling, he trips and he falls onto Esther, who was on the couch. And just as the king comes back in, and it looks like she's on the couch and he's on top of her on the couch, and it looks kind of like he's trying to rape her or some shit or whatever. And the king loses it even more. And the king's like, are you shitting me right now? Even before his sentence, even before the sentence was done, I think, are you like dot, dot, dot. Before the sentence was done, guards had rushed in and they grabbed Haman and like put like a pillowcase over his head or whatever and dragged him out of the room screaming or something. And then one of the servants says, "Hey, King, just FYI, just yesterday, Haman built a 75-foot tall gallows to hang Mordecai on. He really wanted to kill Mordecai, the guy you just paraded through the city." And the king's like, "What? Like, I had no idea Haman had such a boner for killing Mordecai. Like, where was this coming from?" He's like, "You know what? Screw that guy. He's a dick. Hang him on his own gallows." And that's what happened. Haman was hung on his own gallows that was supposed to be for Mordecai. So Haman's dead. And then Mordecai was promoted and given Haman's job and his house and everything. So a good, like, temporary turn of events, right? The main bad guy is dead. And Mordecai is promoted, which is nice and everything. Esther is saved, right? She didn't, from the pop-in and all that. But it didn't solve all their problems because the Purge was still happening. The Purge Day was still coming up. And then, Esther asked the king, like, can you reverse it? Can we undo it? Can we cancel it? Right? Just call it a snow day or something. Just avoid it. And, but unfortunately, like, the king had already made a decree and he couldn't cancel it. But he said, "I'll make a second decree. If people still want to try and have a purge day, we're going to make it a purge day." And so on the 13th day of the 12th month, they had a full-on, all the way, like one side versus the other, like purge day. If anyone hated the Jews and wanted to try and kill them, they were legally permitted to do so. But the Jewish people were encouraged to band together, and it was also legal for them to stand their ground, whatever, to kill their attackers. But they weren't alone. The king's governors and the rulers and government officials and a bunch of other like high profile, whatever people all stood with the Jewish people as well. So they weren't alone. It wasn't just them against the world. They had friends, right? They had people with them. And so on that day, on the 13th day of the 12th month, on the day of the purge, most people opted to not try and kill the Jews because, they were ready to defend themselves. It wasn't an easy fight. There were a few just really big racist, Nazi dickheads that tried to do something against the Jews, but they failed miserably. I think it says at the end of it all, 75,000 of the attackers died, including Haman's 10 sons, who were also hung from the gallows as well. They were clearly just like Haman and also like Nazi whatever dicks, but they all died. So 75,000 people, which is that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people, but they had it coming, right? They initiated the attack. They went looking for trouble when they really shouldn't have. So it's all on them. And after the purge day had ended and everything, the king wrote up a proclamation, a story of Haman's treachery and the story of Mordecai and the Jews and Esther and what had happened. And so that he wanted everyone in all the provinces, everyone in all the land to know how Esther had saved her people. And that's why she gets her own book and her own holiday and everything. She won the Bachelor. She became the queen, and she put her life on the line, and she risked it all to save the people from genocide. Esther was awesome. It's an amazing story. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a fantastic week. Cheers.